Inspiration, the essential video guide winning FML each and every week. I'm your local vengeful ghoul, Drew.
And I'm Joey, the strategy guy, and Happy New Year's because it's 2020, and we're starting this year off with one wide release this weekend, so let's crawl right into the new movie. This weekend, to start things off in 2020, is a reboot of an American remake of the 2004 The Grudge. Now, when a young detective and her family move into a cursed house, they have to try and solve the case, but before too long, the vengeful ghost comes after them and they must do whatever they need to do to survive.
Sounds like a real scary Scooby-Doo story. Now, The Grudge 2020 stars Andrea Riseborough, Jon Cho, and Lin Shaye. I'm telling you, Lin Shaye is in a ton of horror movies. Yeah. She's in the Conjuring movies, the Insidious movies, and oh my gosh, she's cashing all those horror checks.
Cashes checks.
This was also produced by Sam Raimi, who had his hand in such films as Crawl, Don't Breathe, The Grudge 2004, and The Grudge 2. Joey's favorite. He was telling me off camera, right?
No, I don't think so.
I think you did.
No, I think I was asleep. Anyways, Pro Box Office has it at an opening range of $11 million, which is a 21% decrease from last week. Now, The Grudge 2020 has an opening range between $10 million and $20 million. It's rated R. It has a tight 94-minute runtime.
So tight. Now, when looking at comps, we first looked at Pet Sematary, that opened in April of 2019, just for a recency horror movie, rated R, and it was part of a well-known franchise and rebooted to fit the new modern scheme of everything. That one premiered of April 2019 in over 3,500 theaters, and it got over $24 million. That's really, really good.
Nice. Now, the next comp we took a look at is Strangers Prey at Night, which premiered in March of 2018 to over $10 million in 2,400 theaters.
That's right.
But let's talk a little bit more about everything in the movie radar, or
the Modar. So as Joey said in the beginning of this video, there's only one wide release, and when doing our research on thenumbers.com with the report builder, we saw a lot more horror movies that we could put to The Grudge 2020, so we decided that we're going to expound a little bit more on some more comps and why we think that there could be a good comp for The Grudge. So when looking at Sam Raimi and looking at some produced films that he did, and some other sequels or reboots to well-known franchises coming out later than what the originals came out with. We looked first at The Evil Dead that came out in 2013 of April. That one made $25.7 million in over 3,000 theaters. Very impressive. And also we saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D, mind you, making $21.7 million in over 2,600 theaters in January of 2013. Granted, if The Grudge gets anywhere between those two ranges, that's fantastic for The Grudge, especially with its declining LRF.
Yeah. And another movie we looked at was Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones, which was $18.3 million in over 2,800 theaters. It premiered in January of 2014. It had 6,400 PTA. Now, there's other movies to look at, like Unfriended and Oculus, which premiered to, Oculus was $12 million, Unfriended was $15.8 million in 26 and 2,700 theaters, and they both came out one April 2014 and one April 2015.
Yeah, that's the one thing about these horror movie releases in the beginning of the year. Not a lot has been coming out in January, so it's kind of like a nervous kind of seeing how that's going to go on. It's kind of nerve-wracking to see that going down, as all these horror movies have like April tags on them, when this one's coming out in January all by its lonesome. Another movie that I wanted to look at because it was very, very recent, and it was a reboot to a remake of an original, which was Black Christmas. That one originally came out in 1970 something, and then had a reboot in 2006, and now came out in 2019, so it almost fits the bill of The Grudge. It just doesn't have that Grudge type of IPO. Black Christmas made only $4.2 million in 2,600 theaters in December of 2019. I think that's the floor of the Grudge is 1,600. Depending on the theater count, I think 1,600 is the PTA, the floor of the PTA. And then when looking at all these other PTAs, Evil Dead in 2013 made 8,500 PTA in over 3,000 theaters. I mean, if this thing is getting 3,000 theaters, I think it's easy to see that it could more than likely get double digits, possibly even mid double digits. But that floor could be very detrimental.
But, I mean, looking at the FML slate, you still have Star Wars.
Yes.
That's huge right now. Frozen's still out there. Jumanji 2 is still out there. You got awards movies. You got Uncut Gems, Little Women. So it's very saturated with movies right now that are actually going to probably have a bigger draw. Probably have a bigger audience draw with those movies than a horror movie. Even though it is the only horror movie.
All those movies that you just listed are not horror movies unless you're afraid of like Kylo Ren, or if you're afraid of animated cat humanoid looking people, which has been scaring a lot of people because they don't want to go see it in theaters.
That's very true.
Also,
then, I was just going to say, looking back at our list, we didn't talk about The Prodigy, which came out in February of 2019, and that only made $5.8 million.
Yeah.
So it seems like you were talking about the movies coming out in April, they were making a little bit more than like the movies coming out into December and then January.
Right.
But yeah, I think the saturation of the movies that are out there are going to play a big factor, even though it is the only horror movie.
That's true. And to be weary of all this, I'm going to say that this movie is coming out at a time where there are no school. Like, schools are still going to be out. So a lot of things are going to have great holds. This one could see a little bit more of a bump than normal. But then again, like you said, there's a ton of other movies, a ton of competition, a ton of family-friendly competition to go out there and see.
Absolutely.
But this is a horror movie, and some of those things are niche. And it has the nostalgia factor of having the Grudge name. But I'm with LRF. I mean, the LRF is going down, which is sad, is like tricky to deal with, but also it has a huge range of $10 to $20 million. I mean, I think they're hedging their bets. They're like, this one could make 10 or lower, but also 20.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I will say though, the first remake of The Grudge, 2004, that one did really well. It was pretty popular.
Yeah.
So this could be.
I agree with that.
Since it's a new reboot of that, maybe it could do something for the newer, younger audience that hasn't grabbed a hold of that original movie or even the older Japanese versions. So
yeah, there's a lot of things to think about in 2020,
Absolutely.
And it's only one movie. It's The Grudge. I guess that's it.
That's it. That's it. That's all we got.
Yeah.
So good luck with your Fantasy Movie League lineup this week, and remember,
sometimes you gotta risk it to get that biscuit. And also make sure you keep your hand away from your biscuit.